Well, it is time now for our weekly visit with Paul Patterson from the Patterson Comer Law Firm. And our topic today that we had scheduled to talk about was the Alabama Uninsured Motorist Statute. What is it and how can it help you and your family? We will get to that a little bit later on with Paul. But I guess it's a terrible situation that we're dealing with for Alabama football and for these two young men. But timely for us in the fact that you were scheduled to be in studio today and you can give us some legal perspective. All right, you've been cramming here, reading the charges, reading the accounts, trying to go over exactly what happened, and I'm going to read this before you take over. This is according to information in the police report that the arrest occurred early Tuesday morning in a parking lot of a local park there in Monroe, Louisiana. According to the police report, officers pulled up to Robinson's car at 2:33 a.m. smelling marijuana. Now, I'm having a hard time figuring out how you could smell marijuana from your car, your police car. Mm-hmm. When approaching the vehicle, officers spotted a handgun on the lap of the passenger, believed to be Hootie Jones. A bag of marijuana was also observed on the driver's side floorboard, believed to be Cam Robinson. The stolen handgun was located under Robinson's seat. Jones was also charged with possessing a handgun in the presence of narcotics. Okay, Paul, as a lawyer, and you know, as I said earlier, lawyers are going to be lining up in Louisiana to take this case on.
Right.
You already see some potential holes here as far as this police report is concerned.
Yeah, I do. You know, when you have clients come in, you have to sit and listen. This will fall under the Napoleonic Code in Louisiana. But the first thing that I always notice in these cases, and the first thing an attorney is going to look at is, we all have a reasonable expectation of privacy. We do. And if we are in a park, sitting in our car, minding our own business, then we have a reasonable expectation of privacy, and that does not allow law enforcement to come and pull us over or come and interrogate us, okay? So we start there at this situation. So what was the probable cause? And if the officer says he detected marijuana, you know, you look at things such as, how did he detect it? Mm-hmm. You know, what brought him to the vehicle in the first place? Now, again, we are looking at the rights of someone who has the presumption of innocence. Now, we know what they found. We know those things are not good. We know the university is going to have a problem with this situation with narcotics being found in handguns, but take it as if it's two individuals that are not football players that are just there, you know, talking in a vehicle. What brought the officer to the car?
Well, let me play devil's advocate.
Okay.
And is this not probable cause that at 2:30 or so in the morning on a Tuesday morning in a park, in a parking lot, there's a vehicle just sitting there with people in it? Is that not considered probable cause enough for the officers to check that out, maybe knock on the window to find out what's going on?
I think arguably it could be. But again, you balance that with your reasonable expectation of privacy. You know, if it's a public park and you're there and there are no hours where it's closed, can you sit there in your vehicle and talk? Or, you know, is that privacy? And is it reasonably expected to be privacy? Again, something has to bring the officer to the vehicle. If it is the park's closed, there's not supposed to be a vehicle there, then yes, he's got the right to go over there and knock on the door.
I did see this in a report that Don Hartley gave me from here at Town Square. He said in his report, according to the Monroe Police Department, Robinson and Jones were found parked in their vehicle in Forsyth Park after hours.
Well, that would give him the right then to go and check the car out.
Now, that's just according to this report that I'm reading that was given to me from Don Hartley. But if there were hours in that park and it were closed, you would say then that could be...
That could give him probable cause to go over and just check the car. Now, again, take it another step. If marijuana is found under the seat, or was it in plain view? If it's that early in the morning and it's night, what's the lighting like? Again, I'm not saying this is correct, and I'm not saying this is good, because it's not. But you go back to whose drugs, you know, who took ownership of the drugs, who had the vehicle during the day. Is the handgun really Cam's, even though it's in his possession? This happens all of the time. And again, you could be driving down the road, someone borrowed your vehicle. You don't know if they've left something in your vehicle at all. Happens a lot with college kids when it comes to alcohol. Someone will buy a six-pack underage. They'll be in a vehicle with a lot of kids. And a lot of times, if someone doesn't take ownership of it, the law enforcement has no other choice but to arrest everyone in the car, and they will. because no one does accept possession of it or ownership of it. So, you got a lot of things in this case with Cam Robinson that I think Coach Saban and his staff will look at and let the facts play out, because he could have a justification. The drugs may not be his. The handgun may not be his. I don't know if it said the vehicle's his or not. Who had borrowed his vehicle, who had been in it. They just returned home for, I'm assuming, off of classes for the end of spring. So a lot of questions there that I'm going to see down the road, or I can envision a defense attorney looking at, talking to Cam, talking to these young men, getting the full story. But again, it doesn't look good. I agree with that. When you have weapons and you have drugs, that's a deadly mixture.
Paul Patterson is our guest from the Patterson Comer Law Firm here on the Gary Harris Show. We were scheduled to talk about the Alabama uninsured motorist statute. What is it, and how can it help you and your family? We may get to that. We may not. If we don't get to it, we'll do it next week. Let me say this, folks. While Paul is on here, and I know a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen with Cam Robinson and Hootie Jones, if you have a question for Paul or on any legal topic, as we always say, we open it up. You can call the Bud Light Hotline at 205-342-9904. But if you have a question as to what might happen next for Cam Robinson and Hootie Jones, you can call 205-342-9904. Ask Paul maybe where they go in the legal system from here. I'll try to cover that as well. We're going to come back with Paul Patterson after this timeout here on the Gary Harris Show on Tide 99.1 and Tide991.com. Paul Patterson from the Patterson Comer Law Firm, our in-studio guest. We had been scheduled to talk about the Alabama uninsured motorist statute. What is it, and how can it help you and your family? The more I look at it now, the reality of it is we'll probably just have to get that to next week, Paul.
That's fine.
Because we got a phone call right now, and we're going to continue to discuss Hootie Jones and Cam Robinson, and now that this is a legal matter, what their lawyers will try to do to lessen these charges. Right now, let's go to the Bud Light Hotline presented by Adams Beverages at 205-342-9904 and talk to Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, guys. I wanted to get Paul's take on the significance of the jurisdiction for this case. My guess is that prosecutors in Monroe are not going to be inclined to do any favors.
Yeah, that's a very great point there, because you're correct. And
these aren't LSU players; they're Alabama players.
That's exactly right.
And they're guys that left the state to
yes,
play.
they are. That's a great point. All these guys can hope for at this point, as far as is that they get a fair shake in the court system. Now, I'm not sure if it's the West Monroe local municipality, then the charges will probably be in what we would call a district court. You have to understand the Napoleonic Code is different in aspects from what we generally see across the United States. Not entirely, but it would go to a district court or circuit court judge there. And, if these guys are found guilty, there are diversion programs if it's a first-time offense. And the good thing is a lot of times they do try to help these young people to get them the help they need and get them back on a road to being good citizens and being productive in society. So, and that, again, we're assuming these guys are guilty, but that's a great point that you bring up. These are Alabama players outside of Alabama jurisdiction.
But Paul and Chris, if you're still on, let me say this again. I like to be the devil's advocate here with Paul. I know what you're saying, Chris, and I understand that. But Paul, I want your thoughts on this, Paul. These district attorneys, maybe there's a little personal bias involved, but they still are held to the law.
Right.
And if a good criminal defense attorney feels that these DAs are pushing this case beyond any other reason than the legal aspect of it because of a stupid something like they didn't go to LSU out of high school,
right?
That can be used, right, Paul? I mean, they have to be careful how they prosecute this case too.
Right. If these gentlemen walked in my office today, what we would do is I would begin researching the best criminal defense attorneys in this jurisdiction. I have a cousin who practices law in Baton Rouge. I would use all my resources to find out who are the most respected criminal defense attorneys. And we would narrow it down to a field of the best. We would go sit and meet with them. And Gary is correct in the judge, the district attorneys, they are sworn to uphold the law. And someone, an attorney, a defense attorney in that jurisdiction who handles cases just like these, day in and day out, they're going to know what the outcome is in the event that these guys are guilty, because this will not be the first person in West Monroe, Louisiana, who has been pulled over and cited for having marijuana and handguns. It's not. So a good defense attorney is going to be able to say, okay, based on my experience, this is what the district attorney will offer, and this is what the judge will approve. And that's when you have someone that is looking over the shoulder of the district attorney and the judges to make sure that these guys aren't being unfairly punished simply because they play for the Crimson Tide.
Thanks, Chris, for the phone call. If you've got a phone call for Paul, whether it's a question about this Cam Robinson and Hootie Jones case or any other legal matter, you can call in at 205-342-9904. All right, Paul, I've looked at the police report, and obviously, as I like to say, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't play one on TV either, but I do look at this stolen handgun charge, and I'm thinking if I were a lawyer and I take this case for Cam Robinson, that's the first thing I'm working on, is getting that dropped somehow. Is that, from a legal standpoint, a big key? Because
Sure.
You knock that down from a stolen handgun to just a handgun charge, and does the felony at that point go away, or how does that work?
Well, yeah, the district attorney can always look at the set of facts once they talk to the criminal defense attorney.
Because I don't think Cam Robinson would steal a handgun. That's just I think it was probably given to him.
No, and in Cam's defense, did he know the gun was in the car? I mean, that's one thing I'd ask him is, Cam,
Right.
Who's used your car? You've been away at school. Did you have your car with you? If you didn't, when you brought it home, did a friend borrow it? Did a relative borrow it? Is it their gun? There could be a simple answer. So you do have to sit down, and in Cam's defense, you have to sit down and find out who owns the gun. Is it who is the true owner? And again, was it in plain view? Because a lot of times before these cases get to the judge, defense attorneys will file motions to suppress evidence, and they will say this evidence was illegally obtained, and therefore, Judge, we don't want a jury to hear it. And if so, the judge can say, you know what, you're correct. I'm not going to let a jury hear it.
Let's go back to the Bud Light Hotline, presented by Adams Beverages at 205-342-9904. Chuck is with us. Good morning, Chuck.
Hi. I heard you say you'd take another subject, and my question is, thank you, is that does Deontay have, other than maybe expense recourse from a lawsuit standpoint, does he have any way to get the $4.5 million or part of it that was guaranteed to him in the purse, even though the fight didn't come off?
Chuck, that is a great question, and something I'm sure would have come up had this Alabama football arrest not happened this morning. But, yeah, Deontay, the fight gets postponed because of the illegal substance found in Povetkin's system in a drug test. Now, all of a sudden, they're out expenses, they're out. And I know Chuck is talking about part of the purse, but I think the first thing to do is just to get those expenses handled. What legal recourse does the Team Wilder have in regards to what they've been out in terms of money to go over there to Europe and then possibly get part of this purse? It's a good question.
And Chuck, you may not know, I represent Deontay Wilder.
I did know
so,
that.
Yeah,
that's why I asked you the question.
Yeah, I'm a little bit bound by the attorney-client privilege. Great question. We are in the middle of working on every bit of that, so I'm limited in what I can say. But I'll tell you this: there is recourse, absolutely, when someone has spent money to travel, to set up their fight. And, I mean, it is a big operation. We're in the middle of it. I wish I could say more to you, but, yes, there is recourse. And it's really sad that the guy felt like he had to cheat to try to beat Deontay, and it just boils down to that. They had postponed that fight. They kept postponing it, and now we see why. He was trying to clear his system, obviously, of the banned substance. So
Meldonium is actually
Meldonium, that's
system.
right.
Yeah.
And really sad for Deontay because this guy works hard, and if people really knew how hard he works, it's just sad to see him get over there, be prepared, and then this happened. But
and he had, there's expense for getting the sparring partners in and
Absolutely.
so on too. He had a lot of expense here before he even went over to England.
Absolutely,
I would assume it was expensive.
It is very expensive. When you find the sparring partners are not just around the corner. You have to find somebody that matches up to the size of your opponent, has the similar skills, and we've been known to fly guys in here.
Yeah, they don't come cheap,
and they do not come cheap. And it's a way for these sparring guys to make money. So,
no, and even not that, but like Mark Breland and folks like that to come help. It just amazed me that all this went down this way. I know certainly it amazed Jay and Deontay and so on. All those folks. Just a sad deal, as you stated. Thank you. I didn't realize you'd actually worked on the contract and couldn't speak about it, or I probably wouldn't ask the question.
Well, no,
but anyhow.
It's okay. I'm just honoring our attorney-client privilege, and we're also in the middle of it. So, anyway, stay tuned.
Oh, good luck with it, then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck, for the phone call. Just rest assured, Chuck, Paul can not say very much about it, but he's on it. They're on it. So you do need to know that. And Deontay and his folks, there's a lot of expense that went with going over there and getting prepared for that fight, and not to mention the physical taxation, if you will, that Deontay's body spent to get ready for this fight, to train for a fight, and now not to have the fight. I did read where Deontay said, in fact, that when he came back, he was treating this just like he had fought in terms of his rest, because that's how hard he had prepared, and now he had to go into that, come down just as if he had the fight. So they went to a lot of trouble, expense, physical training to get ready for this fight, which was going to happen this Saturday night in Russia. So it's a major setback. But Paul is on that case. He represents Deontay, and he is going to be looking out for Deontay's interest. Getting back to the Cam Robinson and Hootie Jones topic, if you are just joining us, or if you've been in Russia, that's probably the only way you would not know this, that Cam Robinson and Lawrence Hootie Jones were arrested Monday, early Tuesday morning, actually, in Monroe, Louisiana, on multiple charges. According to the Monroe Police Department, Robinson and Jones were found parked in their vehicle in Forsyth Park after hours. Officers recovered a bag of marijuana along with 2 handguns, one of which was allegedly stolen. Both were arrested and booked into the Ouachita Parish Correctional Center. Robinson is being charged with possession of a controlled dangerous substance, the illegal carrying of a weapon, and the illegal possession of a stolen firearm, which is a felony. Jones is being charged with possession of a controlled dangerous substance and the illegal carrying of a weapon. Both were booked just after 3:30 a.m. Robinson's bond was set and Jones' bond not listed at this time. So I guess initially, and the first deal of business would be to get him out of jail on bond.
Right. An attorney would file a motion to set the bond, and a judge would set bond in this case. Neither one of these guys appear to be any type of flight risk. And again, to my knowledge, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time Cam has had any dealings with law enforcement.
As far as I know.
And, and that's a good thing, especially when the university looks at it. If mistakes were made, then it'll come out. And you look at intent. You look at what they knew, why they were there. Did they own the handgun? Who owned it? Who had the car? Who owns the drugs? Because somebody has to take ownership of it. And a lot of those things do get sorted out, and I think it's smart for the university to do their investigation and find out the facts and give these men a second chance if indeed there's a legitimate reason why it occurred.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, but you're used to that being an attorney. A lot of Alabama fans, of course, are concerned about whether or not they'll play football again in Alabama.
That's right.
And I think that's clearly secondary right now to what they're doing within the legal system. But would you gander a thought on whether or not they'll actually be back playing football for Alabama at some point?
I think it depends. If I'm the one making the call, I want to look at the facts when they come out. And if there is a legitimate excuse, if someone had Cam's car and Cam did not have any knowledge of the drugs or was not partaking in the drugs, didn't know about the weapon, then I'm bringing him in, and he's just had a good life's lesson. And what I use with my children and my son is this is a teachable moment. And you just dodged a bullet that could have ruined your career, cost you millions of dollars. You need to be careful of who you take things from or whose car you borrow. And, you are in the limelight, whether you want to be or not. You are. If not, and he needs help, then he has not had a past history of being in trouble, then I would get him the help he needs and see if this young man could restore his life.
One thing I didn't ask you about, but could factor in here, football aside, is I'm sure there are university policies in place in regards to arrest. I guess the first hurdle they have to clear is just getting back in school.
Sure. Sure. The Office of Student Life does a great job at the university. I've worked with Dr. Tim Hebson when I've represented students on numerous occasions, and the university does a great job. They like to take kids and they like to get them the help they need if they need it. And they're fair about the situation. They look at it. They give them a presumption of innocence. And but what I am really impressed with is kids I've worked with before, whether it was dealing with alcohol or drugs, is the university, they're concerned about the student. And they want to see the student get better if they have a problem. And they will provide them with a course of treatment and things they have to do to remain in school or to be on probation or to be out of school for, temporarily while they go and get these courses and get their lives, back on track. You have to remember, these are young, I call them kids. These are young people that make mistakes. They're not used to being in the limelight. You got social media, a lot of pressures on these kids. And you want to see them get the help that they need so they can go on and have a great life, a fruitful life, and a life of being a good citizen. And you just never know. You may turn a kid around. I used to love to do juvenile work because I looked at it as a court of rehabilitation. And a lot of times when you have young kids come in like this can be a time to help rehabilitate a kid, get them on the right path where they don't make these mistakes in the future. And, if you have a kid that's making mistakes over and over and over, there are times you have to say you're finished here. But in this situation, I think the university is going to look at it thoroughly and determine if Cam needs help or if Cam is just an innocent bystander that had no knowledge of what was going on. He was just sitting in a park at night. People can draw their own opinions on it, but in the end, the ultimate goal is you want to see someone go on and have a prosperous life and be a good citizen.
Well, we hope for the best for Cam Robinson and Hootie Jones. The legal system will have to play out. We'll see what happens with them in that regard. We'll see what happens to them in regard to being a student or being students at the University of Alabama, and then also, of course, being football players at the University of Alabama. Paul, enjoyed it. Thanks for coming in. Tell folks again how you and Mike Comer can help them out if they've got a legal issue they need help with.
Sure. We have two offices, one in Northport. That's where Mike's office is located. That's 303 Main Avenue. Mike can be reached at 759-3939. My office is located in Tuscaloosa on 1323 Hargrove Road East, and my number is 345-1000. If we can help you or your family, you give us a call. We meet with you for free, and if we can help you, we will do our best to see that justice is done in your case.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Gary.